Starting the live, and we are live. All right, welcome everyone to the Node.js TypeScript team meeting. I will share the agenda in the chat, so please add yourself if you haven't. And before we start with our agenda, is there any announcement?
The code mod for fixing import specifiers, the file extension, it just successfully migrated the Puppeteer repository, which has all of the use cases that I'm aware of. So I think that means it is ready to go. I just need to do some like last minute polish on it, but I think it will be ready to publish in the next few days.
Okay, okay. Um, So we can start with our agenda. The first point, I think we should start from the type stripping in Node modules, and then we will go to the other points. So there has been some conversation on like if we should or should not do it. I personally think um, this is like for the progression of the feature, uh, it's okay if we do not support it right now. So we can do that much later and see how the ecosystem evolves and reacts to this new change. And like, probably we can evaluate it later on how to do it properly. So maybe Daniel, you want to add something on this point?
We can't hear you.
No, I had to do that the first time I tried speaking. Okay, sorry about that. I left something on behalf of our team on this specific issue around type stripping within Node modules. So I think the current stance, I won't say that the definite stance is that Node should always avoid stripping Node modules, but from all the constraints that we see today, we don't think it's a good idea. We think the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. We don't believe TypeScript can provide the user experience that people would want to support that scenario, at least not near term. So I think it comes back to what Marco said. If I recall it correctly, just that we can revisit it at some point, but it's definitely not a blocker for shipping type stripping today. There might be alternative strategies, but I think we'd be better off not trying to prioritize that in the way of this feature.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, so I'm not thinking that it should be part of necessarily the initial release or something, but if we want to add support for it, it seems Carl and I had the same idea. So one of your main reasons, Daniel, for not doing this was a compatibility concern. So like not knowing when it's okay to do it. So the I'm wondering if we can leverage some existing functionality like the engines section of package.json. So we could say like engines TypeScript greater than or equal to, I don't know, 5.7 or something to determine. So if a package contains a TypeScript version in engines, then we will respect that and try to do it. Otherwise, we ignore it.
Um, I don't know enough about engines to say whether or not. I kind of have seen it being used here and there. It seems a bit complicated, is my understanding. So there may be a way to approach it, but I feel like I won't say it's an outright. I won't outright say it's not an okay approach. But it seems like trying to add more configuration to make this work when we have like an okay solution for library authors today. It's not, again, it's not like we could not revisit the approach in some way. But I don't feel fully equipped to say, whether or not like, well, we could do that today and then we'd be better, we'd be okay for shipping there. I don't recall if Jake on our team had responded to that suggestion at all.
He hasn't yet. It sounds like I think he has some specific thoughts on DevEngine's approach, but he could not make it here because of power outages in
Yeah.
Seattle. But I expect he will continue the conversation on the issue soon.
Cool. Just to be clear, I think what we have right now is great. Just like if we wanted to go that extra little step, I think from the sounds of it, this may be a way to sort of, I don't know, unblock it or whatever.
Like a short-term mitigation could be to enable it behind a flag in Node, which is something that I've been thinking of doing maybe after unflagging. So like people, if they want to use it in their, I don't know, monorepo or like their very small use case, but still does not allow to have it enabled by default or to have people publish it on NPM. That could be like a workaround for people who really, really desire to have it.
Right. Well, it's kind of, I don't know if anyone would be able to use it, right? Because even in the monorepo scenario, it's, most tools that set up a sort of workspace or monorepo or whatever you want to call it, use symbolic links, and typically the tools will use RealPath to figure out like, is it really a node modules or not? So I don't know if that, like, people would have to start publishing TS files to the registry, and then you would actually start seeing it. And then in the meantime, you might have a good number of confused users as well. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? Like people won't do it because it's not supported. It's not supported because we're not sure if it's a good idea. Right. But you could do it just to experiment with like layout, right? Like, what if you had this package? Let's create a gzip, install that. Andrew's got a hand up though.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, just to clarify on that, because I feel like I've heard confusion on this a couple of times. The monorepo scenario, like Daniel was saying, with the symlink already works. I've tried this out with the experimental transform types flag on a personal project when I was just kind of figuring out how all these pieces would fit together, and that works great. And I feel like that's the most common use case, is like linking these things during development. And then maybe you like build JavaScript before you publish to NPM, or maybe you're in a situation where you're never going to publish to NPM. It seems, because that already works, I couldn't quite tell, but it seems like what Carl was talking about at the beginning of that issue that we're discussing was maybe publishing a package to an internal registry. And since they control all of the usage of that package, that they know what version of TypeScript they're supporting, and they know that the package is pulling it down can consume TypeScript directly. But that feels like not a super common use case here.
I'm just taking notes.
We've also sort of documented what users should do if they do want to use the workspace scenario. At least for the support that we have in TypeScript 5.7 for being able to like reference a TS file and like run it in place. where we've basically given some guidelines around using custom conditions and things like that on our blog. It's maybe something that Node users would want to, maybe Node would want to document that as well for those sorts of scenarios. But yeah, I think like Andrew was saying, it's not like the most elegant approach for some of this stuff, but you can get it working.
Okay, so all right. So I think like there is probably consensus that this is something that we do not want to have right now, and it can wait. So and unless there is a stronger motivation, because if we see that monorepo work, like I've tested it internally with NX, and that didn't work, but probably some configuration. But unless there is some stronger motivation, we will delay this after the feature is more mature. Go ahead, Jacob.
So my code mod test earlier today that migrated the Puppeteer code base, that was run on a monorepo. And it uses this flag. So that confirms that it does in fact work.
If you have the NX example that wasn't working as like a repo somewhere, I would be interested in taking a look because I know that it is a popular platform. It'd be good to understand at least why it wasn't working.
I will try to make a pub, since it was a private internal repo. I will try to make a public repo. So okay, so I will go on the issue and say that for the time being we don't like monorepos already, like not all of them, but they should work, and we don't plan on adding support right now, and we will reevaluate this after the feature becomes more stable. That's okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I think we're effectively saying, as far as we know, all the monorepo situations that we know of work, modulo the NX one that Andrew has kindly offered to investigate. That sounds good.
Okay. Taking notes. Okay. So I think that is it for this point. Shall we move to the next issue, the next item on our agenda?
Yeah.
All right. So we have unflagged experimental strip types. I will paste the issue in the chat. So I open this issue. So let me open it. Okay, so there are a few things to discuss on the unflagging. So first of all, I think with TypeScript 5.7, it's like a big step forward and makes it much easier to unflag it. So we should document on the Node documentation website on how to publish TypeScript on NPM. I think some of this was already covered in the release of, like a little bit was covered in the release of TypeScript 5.7, if I'm not mistaken. There was some explanation on how to fix relative paths and all of that. So this needs to be done for Node. So unless someone wants to volunteer here to do it. Okay, Jacob, that's great. Jacob, volunteer.
I can review it if you want, Jacob.
Yes, please. Thank you. When do we want it to go live? Like ASAP, or do we want to wait for 5.7 to land? Because I think it's in RC right now, right?
Yeah, it should be landing tomorrow. Ideally. Yeah, so I guess as soon as it lands would be I prefer. You shouldn't have to wait too long.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's tomorrow, I think it can be already done today, like in ASAP, since it's gonna take some more time. Okay. Oops. Okay. Okay. The other point is the final acknowledge from the TypeScript team. So, like, what do you think about having it unflagged?
I think that there's still a little bit I think there's, at least on my part, a little bit of concern around the idea that some constructs will just be rejected. But the error message is in place right now. We've reviewed them yesterday. They seem fairly good. So that for us, we're excited by the idea that you can just take, some TS code bases or just write a new TypeScript code base and have it run directly in Node. And that's very nice and that's exciting. The only missing piece from our part is providing errors in the editor saying you're about to do something that is not going to be supported in the runtime that you're targeting. However, from the conversation that we had with our team, I don't think that that's a blocker. I think it's just sort of a developer experience improvement on TypeScript's part. So, Andrew, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have no blockers on this matter at all. I think we're just excited for it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we'd like to follow up with a flag that you can set that will tell you like you can't use an enum or you can't use a namespace or all of the other syntax restrictions that are in strip types. The only kind of bigger question that we had around that is the future of experimental transform types. Just because if that also continues to move forward and eventually supersedes strip types, then we will have made this flag that tells you you can't use enums and namespaces for nothing. And we noticed that, talk of unflagging that was not on the agenda. There didn't seem to be any discussion in the issue. So we wanted to check in and see where things are with that. Are source maps still an issue? I wanted to get a status update.
So, in my opinion, and like what I think it will probably happen is that unflagging transform types is controversial. I've also heard the opinion of other Node.js TSC members, and the reason why is once you enable source maps, you enable for everything, so also for JavaScript. So that is something that Node does not want to, like, it's an overhead that Node would like to avoid. And if we could have strip types it works well because it solves this problem of not having source maps, and it's much faster. We added some benchmarks to check the difference between the two, and strip type is much faster. So what would be great is to have a TypeScript flag that obviously excludes the syntax that it's not supported by strip types, and we will also keep having transform types, but always behind the flag. So if the user wants to have it, they can do it, but behind the flag. It's the same thing for source maps. Like right now, if you want source maps enabled, you need to specifically enable it, and that's the same thing we want to do for transform types.
That makes sense. We were also supposing that if we had a flag that prevents you from using these runtime transformed features like enums and namespaces, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but I think that probably a lot of people, especially those at Bloomberg, would probably turn that flag on all the time, no matter what, even if transform types becomes a future standard.
Yes, very much. We would be the first adopter. We'd provide as much good feedback as we can. Yes, because internally we use our very similar compiler, TS blank space. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming to a resolution on this.
Yeah, so it sounds like work on a flag like that on TypeScript would not be wasted regardless. So yeah, we'll look into following up on a flag like that, and then that will be highly recommended in the config. I noticed you have a tsconfig example in the Node docs. So we'll eventually have one more flag to add there, or possibly one that implies the others. So it's a simpler, easier config. That was another point of discussion we had yesterday. How many flags should you need?
Okay, so is it possible to like we could, for example, wait for the new flag? It's gonna take some time to unflag it because there's still some other blockers. So like, could we wait, or like, what do you think it would be the best way to handle this?
To update the docs, or to
unflag the experimental strip type? Like, should we wait until TypeScript has a flag for compatibility, or?
I don't think that's a requirement necessarily. I think it's like more of a nice to have. So ideally, TypeScript 5.8 will have that flag, and in the meantime, that's like a 3-month-ish period, where Node users will be able to start using this new functionality, and they'll get an error message as soon as they run it. And ideally, it should be pretty understandable. So in that time, yes, some people will use tsconfig, like copy the tsconfig from the docs website. It might not have that flag, but I think that that's okay. And then when we blog about it, like, people will realize, oh, I should turn this on. This keeps happening to me, or something like that. It's not unreasonable.
Okay. Okay. So the other point that we have so the documentation about module resolution and other TypeScript configuration, this was added by me on the Node.js documentation. Maybe you want to review that. So we are so like the documentation that we have on the Node.js website is correct, and let me grab that. Org. The website as usual. Okay. Yeah. So this is. I will paste it here in the chat and add it on the add here. Added. Okay. This is something we can do asynchronously. Then we have notify other popular loaders and ask for comments. I pinged the maintainer of TSX and TS Node, but have not received any comments so far. So I will ping them again. I don't know. What other frameworks or loaders that use TypeScript do you think we should ping other than these two?
I think, well, technically Babel loader can process TypeScript as well. So I don't know who the main maintainer of that is.
I think it's Nicolò Ribaudo.
Yeah, he would know,
ping.
right?
Yep. So I will tag him. Okay. And finally, we also need to check front-end frameworks, meta frameworks, if they agree with the design. But I think this is a bit harder to do. Like, should we ping Angular or?
You can. I mean, I'm not gonna say no, because I think that, everyone can provide useful feedback. I don't know if there's anything where it's weird, because a lot of these frameworks typically have like a language variant of JavaScript, or they use like the full TypeScript superset, right? So they might use enums, or they might use like another extension like JSX. And none of these run directly in Node, even with this. So it's not, I don't think it's unreasonable to ping them just to get thoughts if you want. The biggest thing that I could imagine is like they, like many of us, they'd just be excited to have like scripts that you can run directly as TypeScript files, right? Without compilation. So I feel like that's the big thing that you'll get some feedback on, but yeah.
Okay. And then we have an issue, like this is a node issue on SWC on Windows ARM64, and we still cannot figure out what to do for this one. So if you're listening to this meeting and you have a ARM64 machine that can let us use, that would be great. But yeah, that's something we.
Didn't James Snell say he has one?
Yeah, I need to ping him, but I think it's unlikely that it can get shipped from the US to EU easily. So we still to figure out on that. All right. So in terms of the roadmap, I think we're doing great and almost close to have it unflagged and working. So I'm pretty happy about the work that has been done. So I think that's it for the agenda. Is there anything else we want to discuss? Cool. If not, then it's been a great meeting, and we will see you in 2 weeks. I will be on PTO, so probably we will have to reschedule that, but I will let you know. All right.
Cool.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.